My younger son and his wife are house hunting in Nashville, and they're finding it rough going. They're hoping to have children before too long and would like a slightly larger house, an extra bedroom, or maybe a family room. They'd like to stay in their modest, slightly funky neighborhood, but there's competition from a lot of others who have deeper pockets than they do. They could afford that extra room if they moved farther out. But home for them is a neighborhood called Donaldson. So I've been thinking a lot about home and security and the choices we make that determine the arc of our lives, and you can imagine my delight to come today to the reading of Joseph, whose brothers make a fateful choice this morning, one that will carry Joseph far from home. They decide to kill him. Reuben talks them out of the murder. Instead, Joseph's brothers abandon him in an empty well, which becomes a third-class ticket to Egypt. Joseph is a talented fellow, and between his talent and God's providence, things get better. Many of you know the story. The paradox at the heart of the Joseph narrative, of course, is that without the brothers' cruel fratricidal gesture, the family would have perished in the famine that soon strikes their homeland while sparing Egypt. Given all of this, one might have expected Joseph's heart to have hardened against his brothers, but it does not. His outer resilience in the face of adversity is mirrored inwardly by a heart that grows supple, compassionate, and large. This combination of outer strength and inner compassion allows him to become his brother's keeper. When we first meet Joseph, he's a dreamy young lad, kind of a daddy's boy, really, sheltered from life's harshness. His brothers, for the most part, are his opposite. They are angry. They're tired of their father playing favorites. Moving along to the gospel, we see Peter has a long way to go as well, as Jesus' words to him make clear. Yet they all, Joseph, the brothers, Peter, they all change. They're all converted, if you will. Over time, Joseph comes to embody many of the qualities of Jesus in the later Testament. Peter and the apostles and the band of brothers also change, though change doesn't come as easily for them. Not that it comes all that easily for Joseph. Nevertheless, all change radically. All become themselves, become who God intended them to be. So I wonder, maybe you wonder too, what does it take to change a human heart like that? One way to enter that question is to put yourself in the place of one of the characters we meet today. It could be Joseph, it could be the whole conglomeration of his brothers, or one brother in particular. It could be Peter. But put yourself in one of those places and begin to imagine the stories that we hear this morning through their eyes and their ears and their bodies, their experience. For all of them, like us, are just figuring out what it means to be human. They're figuring out how to lead a good life. And like us, they live in a world full of contradiction and paradox, a creation that is perfect and yet in progress. So becoming who and what God made them to be is hard work for them as it is for us. So keep thinking about that question, about what it takes to change, and about your character. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I see Joseph. If you also pick Joseph, hold everything I say lightly because you may see him more clearly than me. Certainly, I expect you'll see him differently than me. Anyway, what I see at the outset is an untenable situation for Jacob's household. There are 12 sons living there by 4 women, 2 wives and 2 maidservants. That's one heck of a blended family, presenting no end of challenges, especially for the parents. And however sympathetic we may be to his feelings, Jacob's decision to favor the 2 sons of Rachel, particularly Joseph, think amazing Technicolor Dreamcoats, creates a family dynamic that is bound to explode. Joseph certainly cannot discover who he is without leaving his fractured and fractious family. How could any family or sibling system heal with so many living under the roof of one very misguided father, however well-intentioned we may see him to be? And so Joseph does what he has to do. He leaves home to find home. Probably all of us in one way or another have done that. And like many before him, including some of us, his leaving results in descent, down into the pit or the well, down into slavery in Potiphar's house, down into prison, down, down, down. And at each descent, now forgive this pun, I just love puns and I can't resist them. At each descent, he rises to the occasion. Because he's capable and grace seems to favor him, he grows into an impressive human being. Not only does he come into his own in the outer world, reaching the position of power that allows him to save his family from starvation, his inner growth is even more remarkable. We're not shown all the details of that growth in the narrative, but we certainly see that the once pampered boy, forcibly exposed to the worst that humankind can offer, changes. And this leads him not into this experience of being exposed to a very harsh world, prison, slavery, all of that. This experience leads him not to become bitter in heart, but to develop an astonishing capacity for forgiveness and compassion. Now, a broken heart sometimes organizes itself around retribution. If we've been wronged, our heart often will organize itself to get even with those who hurt the person. And such a heart becomes rigid. Stony is the biblical word for it. And it then sees the world as split between good and bad, angels and demons, and it never for an instant doubts that it is angelic and the demonic is out there. I imagine hearts that pump like that, constricted by unending violence and hatred, inevitably harm whatever they touch. Their toxic energy must despoil not only other human hearts, but flow also into the rivers and oceans, the forests and deserts, into all the living things that God has made. And I hate to say this, but we certainly see this in our time. Joseph's response to unjust suffering is very different. His heart flows from and into a different river. He lives and moves and has his being in the waters of repentance and reconciliation, of forgiveness and love, of compassion. And these qualities naturally flow toward a conversion of heart. This is what heals the family of Jacob. living, bear with me, it's kind of a big metaphor, but living in those waters, that inner river, Joseph and his brothers and his father all come to discover that love and forgiveness, not hatred and retribution, are what make us fully human. This conversion of heart, I think, becomes possible only when our hearts relax into God's heart, when our hearts feel the fullness of God's love, know that our wounds and sins are being washed whiter than snow by that love. Only then can hatred's enticements fade and our hearts grow into a newness of life that was really ours from the beginning. This movement, I think of it anyway, as a kind of oneing of our hearts speaking to, beating with, flowing in unison with God's heart. I believe that's what Joseph finds today and all of the others, his brothers and Peter's, and I think if they can find it, we can too. So I'm going to close with just a brief note on the gospel because that's so rich. I feel guilty ignoring it, but Joseph is even richer today, I think. But I think they're actually connected because just as Joseph had to leave home to find home, I wonder if Jesus' rebuke of Peter was his way of telling his friend, you've got to get out of the boat and stay out of the boat to get into the fullness of life. It's the only way you'll find your true home. Go forth into life, as scary as it may be, or as wonderful as it may be. It's going to be both. One way or another, through a raging storm or a dry, abandoned well, all of us do find ourselves entering the waters of life. And there we encounter unexpected challenges. We make choices that lead to unintended consequences. We do and fail to do deeds, both good and bad. And all of that's inevitable because it's those experiences of life that shape our heart. Again, we know that some find in the water of life experiences that make their hearts bitter or angry. Yet our Jewish and Christian scriptures offer a different possibility. We see it in all of the readings today, the Psalm, the reading from Paul, the first reading, and the Gospel. What they do is they show us waters of forgiveness and love that make hearts new. Those are the waters that lead us home. Home not to Donaldson or Canaan, not to Egypt or even Bolingbrook, but to God's heart, overflowing, ever-flowing, always spilling into the task of creation, of making all things new. It's what we are meant to live, it's how we are meant to live, and it's got plenty of room for all God's children.